Welcome back to the Chicana Kitchen. Today we're making a fall favorite, pumpkin bread. This is a version that I've dialed in over the years. My family loves it and I hope you will too. Let's get baking. We're going to start with our dry ingredients. That'll be 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, which works out to 190 grams. And another 1.5 cups, or another 1.5, or 190 grams of whole wheat flour. You can do this with just all-purpose or with a little less whole wheat. All right, there we go. Oh, the oven's ready. There we go. So there's our flour. It's a total of 380 grams, 190 plus 190. There's our math test for the day. We're also going to put in a teaspoon of salt. I use kosher salt. You can use table salt. It's a little less salty if you use kosher salt. 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And 2 tablespoons of pumpkin pie spice, or pumpkin spice. I mix my own pumpkin spice from a mixture of ground ginger, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, and a little bit of clove. You can of course use any pumpkin pie spice mixture that you like, or any mixture of those spices, as long as it comes up to about 2 tablespoons or 6 teaspoons. All right, so those are our dry ingredients. We're gonna whisk them together. Once that's mixed, we're gonna move on to our wet ingredients. So that will be 2 cups or a full can of pumpkin. You can half this recipe. We're making 2 loaves of pumpkin bread. You can do half a loaf or half a can of pumpkin and half all the ingredients and make a loaf. But who doesn't like pumpkin bread? Your neighbors, your friends, or your future self, once you freeze some, will thank you for making the 2 loaves. And then you won't have an awkward half a can of pumpkin hanging around in your fridge. To our pumpkin, we are going to add 2 cups of light brown sugar. You can use dark brown sugar. If you don't have dark brown sugar, you can use white sugar, and if you have a little molasses, add a little bit of that in. All right, so there's our brown sugar. That weighs out to about 460 grams. And we're gonna start stirring this together a little bit. Just a little bit. Because next we're going to add 4 eggs. And we're also going to add oil. I use a mixture of vegetable oil and light olive oil. So I've already got a half a cup of vegetable oil in here. We're just going to add another half a cup of olive oil. The olive oil flavor doesn't really pick up or isn't really noticeable in the bread, but it gives us a little bit of balance. So there's our oil. We're going to go ahead and start to mix. And as we go, we can kind of beat those eggs. You could beat them separately in a cup before you put them in, but everything's going to be mixed in just fine. So just make sure you don't have any blobs of egg yolk as you go along. After a minute or so of mixing, we've got things mostly evenly incorporated, but we are going to add another half a cup of water and go ahead and mix a little bit more to get that thoroughly or evenly incorporated into our wet ingredients. Now that our wet ingredients are pretty well mixed, we're going to start adding the dry mixture in a few additions. We're not alternating it with anything, we just want to make sure we don't wind up with any big clumps of unmixed flour. And once it's mostly mixed in, we can add some more. And the last of our flour. And we'll mix that all the way in. We don't want to overmix, but again, just want to make sure there are no pockets of dry flour in our batter. So once our batter is mixed all the way, it should look about like this. Take a couple sweeps through the bowl and make sure you don't have any of those clumps of dry mixture hanging around in there. All right, we look good. So now it's time to pour the batter into the prepared pans, but if we want to add anything in, this is also the time to do that. I have some chocolate chips here. You can add in nuts. I'm going to do 1 loaf plain and 1 loaf chocolate chips. About 110 grams of chocolate chips will go into one of the loaves. But first I'm going to measure out one of the pans of pumpkin bread. And the nice thing about using a mixing cup like this, a giant mixing cup, is that I know what my volume is, so I can put about half into one pan. All right, we'll go ahead and do that. So we have 2 pans, 8 by 4 inch pans that have been lined with parchment paper and sprayed with a little bit of nonstick cooking spray. Our oven's ready to go at 350 degrees. These will usually bake for about an hour, but you want to start checking at 50 minutes just in case the toothpick should come out clean. And again, that can take, depending on your oven temperature and your elevation, anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes. All right, so this winds up being just a hair over 6 cups of batter. So we're going to put half of that into one of these pans, and then we are going to stir chocolate chips into the other half of the batter and add that to the other pan. So let's check. You can also do this with your weight, especially if you're doing them both the same. Your pans will wind up obviously weighing about the same. We need a little bit more batter in this one. All right. Then we're going to put our 110 grams or so of chocolate chips into the rest of the batter. Perfect. I use a mixture of semi-sweet and bittersweet chocolate chips. You can use whatever you like. Even milk chocolate chips can be tasty. All right, so our second loaf is in like so. Got a little bit of batter left that doesn't have any chocolate chips. I'm going to add it back to the other pan. Smooth the tops of these a little bit. 1 errant chocolate chip, there we go. And then an optional but really tasty addition is to put some cinnamon sugar on the top of each loaf. All right, you want to put enough on there that it doesn't soak all the way into the batter. And what that's going to do is give you a nice crispy crust on the top that should crackle right down the middle. You can also do this with demerara sugar or sanding sugar, and the cinnamon can be optional, but since it's already pumpkin spiced, a little cinnamon is a good idea. All right, next stop is the oven. Our bread's ready, and it's time to put it into the oven. In they go, and we'll see them in about an hour. It's time to give our bread another check. It's looking good, but we'll give it a toothpick test to make sure. Toothpick into the center, comes out clean. We can double check the other loaf just to make sure the chocolate chips didn't get us a problem. All right, except for a little bit of melted chocolate, that one's clean too. This took exactly an hour, and just so you know, about 50 minutes in when I did my first test, it didn't seem like it was anywhere close. Please definitely don't think, oh no, it's gonna go take another 20 minutes, check it again in 5 and another 5. And this came out perfectly right at an hour. We're going to let those loaves cool completely before we slice them, no matter how good they smell. You want to wait until they're cooled all the way so that the texture of your bread is ideal. We hope you give this pumpkin bread a try, and we're sure that you'll enjoy it when you do. Check back every Friday for new videos, and thanks for joining us at the Chicana Kitchen.